Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by James Bond. Wait, does James Bond really need a tuxedo? I mean, he's a spy that drinks on the job while saving the world from disfigured villains and hitting on every woman he meets. Seems like more of a tank top situation. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. I'm really happy with that one, by the way.
That was a good one. Well done.
Today's show is brought to you by Knuckles' Sandwiches. Come get a mouthful of Knuckles sandwiches and try our award-winning marmalade at Knuckles' Sandwiches. Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we are filmmakers, writers, producers, some more reluctantly than others. And we like to analyze films, bringing all of that pseudo knowledge into the fold. We have yet to make an entire movie, but we'll see if we can remedy that in the next 6 months. I have so much to talk about today. I think we should just dive right in. What are we going to do today, man?
Absolutely. Today we are covering Top Gun, the original, 1986, I believe. So if you haven't seen that film, please pause it and go watch it. It's on Netflix, streaming at least till the end of May. So if it's not streaming anymore, just buy it and watch it.
For sure. We'll look at a few things. We'll touch on some of the cinematography. We'll look at the editing and music, looking at how they edit the aerial combat, and also how they connect sequences through music. And we'll look at some of the story and writing, a classic 80s plot line, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. As students at the United States Navy's elite fighter weapons school compete to be the best in the class, one daring young pilot learns a few things from a civilian instructor that are not taught in the classroom. Directed by Ridley Scott, written by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr.
Shoot, hold on.
Yeah.
I totally botched that, my bad.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just read what's on the page.
Yeah, man. No, good job. My fuck up.
Okay. All good. All right, I'll just start from directed by?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Directed by Tony Scott, written by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr., cinematography by Jeffrey L. Kimball, starring Tom Cruise as Maverick, Kelly McGillis as Charlie, Anthony Edwards as Goose, Val Kilmer as Iceman, Tom Skerritt as Viper, Michael Ironside as Jester, Meg Ryan as Carole, and Tim Robbins as Merlin.
Maverick, you just did an incredibly brave thing. What you should have done was land your plane. You don't own that plane, the taxpayers do. Son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash. You've been busted. You lost your qualifications as section leader 3 times. Put in hack twice by me. With a history of high-speed passes over 5 air-controlled towers and 1 admiral's daughter. Penny Benjamin. And you, asshole, you're lucky to be here.
Thank you, sir.
And let's not bullshit, Maverick. Your family name ain't the best in the Navy. You need to be doing it better and cleaner than the other guy. Now, what is it with you?
Just want to serve my country, be the best fighter pilot in Navy, sir.
Don't screw around with me, Maverick. You're a hell of an instinctive pilot. Maybe too good. I'd like to bust your butt, but I can't. I got another problem here. I gotta send somebody from this squadron to Miramar. I gotta do something here. I still can't believe it. I gotta give you your dream shot. I'm gonna send you up against the best. You 2 characters are going to Top Gun. For 5 weeks, you're gonna fly against the best fighter pilots in the world. You were number 2, Cougar was number 1. Cougar lost it, turned in his wings. You guys are number 1.
All right, Todd. So this is 1986 calling.
Yeah.
Are you picking up the phone?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of, okay. I saw I'll start it with this. Saw a clip, from, God dang it. What's his name?
Anthony Edwards?
No. Man, I have so bad, Quentin Tarantino. talk about the
Oh,
real
man.
meaning. You've seen this.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
it's hard to not watch it like that. I don't think he's right. I don't think it's
Yeah.
so
yeah.
basically it's like, for those of you who don't know, it's just a clip. I don't even know what it's from. It looks like it's from a movie.
Yeah,
From a movie?
I want to say that might be from Four Rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
Well, he talks about like the real meaning of Top Gun, which is about, Maverick fighting to be either, or his fight to either be gay or not be gay, and there's so many references to butts and like hugs and like real male camaraderie, that kind of thing. But I think I don't think that's the case here. I think it's just it's 1986. He was trying to get the director was trying to get Tony Scott was trying to get across this camaraderie, this like a band of brothers, family kind of camaraderie like feel. And in 2022 it seems a little
homoerotic.
homosexual, which
Yeah.
is whatever. It just is. So that aside, there's to me there's a lot of great things about this film. I mean, the cinematography is incredible, especially from 1986. I mean, I was watching this and I was thinking, this is Interstellar. There's a lot of stuff where they put the camera on the wing,
Yeah.
right on the side of the outside of the plane as it's turning or as it's going through cloud or whatever. They use a lot of directional, like plane directional things to orient you in a dogfight. So if Maverick says I'm banking right, we see the plane go out of frame to the right. If he says he's going vertical, I'm going vertical too, we see the plane go straight up. Right now, there's not really a whole lot to orient you because except for the direction of the plane in the frame, right? So I mean, that plane could have been going straight and flat, but you turn the camera and it looks like it's going up, but the dogfight editing is so brilliant in this movie. Like I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it, because this is just like from
I mean, it's hard to walk away without thinking that, right? Like the aerial editing is incredible, because like you just said, there's a lot of expositional dialogue while they're in the cockpit, right? I'm banking left, and then we cut to a shot of him like going to the left. I mean, individually, if you were to just look at capturing all this, it's probably extremely unexciting filmmaking, right? Because you're just kind of out in the field and you're like, okay, do we need a shot of this from the ground, or do we need a shot of this from the air, from above? And so deciding that will probably change from a cinematographer point of view what your background is. Do you want sky in the background, or do you want land in the background, or do you want the horizon, right? Those are three completely different ways of filming this, which requires a lot of coordination and resetting in order to get the right background. But it's all set up with the dialogue. I'm banking left, and narrating their moves works because they're communicating with each other. And so it doesn't feel like they're trying to orient you, the viewer. It feels like they're communicating amongst themselves, which is important, right? That's an important part of teamwork. The stuff that you were just talking about that Tony Scott was really trying to drive home, right? Is the camaraderie and the way they handle each other. And it doesn't matter what you say, it's all going to come off as homoerotic.
You said it, not me.
But it also, all that stuff also helps to orient the audience and connect each jet with who's inside, because that's the other thing, is if you're not telegraphing through dialogue and through these shots in the cockpit, then it's just all going to be like, who's in that jet? A jet looks the same no matter what, who's in it from 1,000 feet away. And so using that and intercutting the cockpit dialogue with random shots of jets making maneuvers, because again, we don't necessarily know if that's Tom Cruise's jet or if it's Iceman's jet. There's really nothing telling us these things apart, because they don't. The classic World War II style of we're going to paint something meaningful to the crew on the side of this jet doesn't exist in this universe to the degree that you need to be able to see it from a great distance. And then from there, they have so many other tools to help continually orient the viewer about what's happening. It would be insanely easy to get lost without all these things tying us together, because at the end of the day, you're just a dogfight probably isn't that exciting from the ground because it takes so long to get into position and maneuver. But through all these inner cuts, you're able to just kind of jump to, oh, he banked left and now he's looped around. He's already back behind again, right? And you can do that through 3 or 4 very fast, lightning fast cuts. And so you use those things, right? The dialogue from the cockpit, shots of jets making maneuvers, and now you can also jump into their targeting HUD, right? With the arrows and the sound, right? And now you're visually communicating, who's in danger, because they're also still communicating, oh, he's locking on or whatever, right? You're constantly hearing people tell you what you're seeing and who's in trouble, who's in not. And then of course you have the radar, right? Because you can cut to the control tower, right, to perfectly communicate what's happening in the air. And the control tower can show you close-ups of the radar, and that's how you get 1 bogey becomes 4, becomes 5, and now you can ramp up the tension. And it's just all incredibly well thought out, maybe from the script standpoint, but certainly executed from the directing and the editing standpoint, because I can't imagine in 1985, whenever you're editing this, and it's probably all reel to reel, and you're making some of these cuts that are like 12 to 20 frames long, like that, the precision to find what you want had to have been,
to cut it right.
Yeah. Exhausting. There was probably just oodles of tape and just jets. I mean, it probably looked like a madhouse in that editing room. But it was just absolutely immaculate to today. Like you said, you're watching this in 2022 and saying, this is insane. This is incredible. And it probably even goes further back. I mean, you referenced, Interstellar and using the, how Top Gun is using the mounting on the wing, but according to The Aviator, I haven't watched this old movie, but according to The Aviator, was it Hell's Angels, was using some of that same ideology of we're going to mount cameras to planes, and they had to work through, how to make it feel like a dogfight, even though you're out in a pretty blue sky, whatever. That was a whole plot line in a different film. But I can only imagine what you're thinking in 1984 or 85 as you're developing this project. How are we going to capture this? And so you probably go to NASA, you probably go to the Air Force, and you get a lot of help in saying, how do y'all analyze your pilots? What are y'all doing? And how can we make it look 10 times cooler? But it all culminated, to your point, in the editing bay, because they really had to make it sing. And my God, just immaculate.
Yeah. Unreal. And I mean, I guess it all culminates in the in the real dogfight at the end, but I think that all the stuff of all the training stuff is really that's the thing that that's the most amazing to me, because the ending dogfight, I guess, I thought they did a really job of heightening the tension of the MiG is shooting and misses, but then the MiG shoots and hits, and then we're shooting at them and we hit, but then we miss twice and then we hit again. So there's a lot of explaining and a lot of things that that happen and then don't happen and then happen. It's kind of, it's not like it's the normal formula. It's not like, we're going to hit every single time.
Yeah.
Because then, as soon as a missile goes off, it's going to hit or it's going to miss. No, it's you just don't know. And so there were a couple of times where we miss and I thought we were going to hit, and I thought that was really good. But all of the training dogfights were really the most interesting to me, especially the one with Jester when he goes below the hard deck. I love that because for so many reasons. One, it gives you as someone who might, even if you were in the military, you might not be in the Navy, you might not be a pilot, understanding that there are rules and what the idea of a hard deck, right?
That's lingo that we don't know.
Yeah, did not know that. Okay, cool. So you don't engage below 10,000 feet. Okay. And he did it the level at which he got in trouble, and yet he was still super respected because he flew really well, and understanding that what he did was, it also gives you the understanding in the story of what he did was actually amazing, right? Even if he got in trouble, it was amazing. So it establishes him even more as like this great pilot, which we already kind of know from the very beginning when he does the inverted thing with the MiG, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like so amazing. But that and then when he fights Viper, I thought it was really great. Like he doesn't win. That's such a great storyline. Like he doesn't become Top Gun. Iceman does. Because of so many reasons. I mean, obviously Goose passing away, which you got to have a loss. And how do you have a loss, when you're only going to have one fight at the very end, right? But he needs to go through this war in his head before that, so that the fight at the end is his redeeming moment. So he has to have this loss early on. Or earlier. So how do you make that happen? Well, an accident. You make it happen with an accident, which happens all the time. What they do is dangerous, and it establishes what they do as dangerous because people could die even in training situations. And obviously, Goose Dying is like one of the most timeless deaths in all of cinema, really.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, even today, you talk about Goose Dying to people and they're like, oh, Goose, which is amazing because it's amazing, like, storyline. He's the comic relief.
Yeah.
And, as stories go, the comic relief never lasts, right? But how does the comic relief go out? That's an important thing as well. Like, and in this scenario, I just thought it was so impactful because it was a complete accident. It wasn't like, nobody wanted it to happen, and it happened from Iceman. And so, which I thought was a great twist there, because it could have happened just, maybe in some other way that didn't have anything to do with Iceman, right? But then later on, when Iceman says that he basically like goes up to Maverick and says, "I'm sorry about Goose. Everybody loved him, whatever." It feels real. It feels like, he doesn't blame himself. He knows that it was an accident, those kinds of things happen. And I think that you can tell that, especially, I love the 10, 15 second scene of him being exonerated in the hearing
The
court,
or whatever.
the hearing. Thank you. We needed that. We needed it to be told to us and to him, this was not your fault. Without that, then we can just assume that it's okay for him to blame himself.
Yeah.
If he were a better pilot, he would have been able to recover from that spin, or it was definitely Iceman's fault, so he should definitely apologize, or feel bad about it. But no, Iceman doesn't need to feel bad about it, and neither does Maverick. And that 20 seconds was so vital to give to us as a viewer, and so that, when Maverick goes to Viper and says I don't know what to do, and Viper doesn't tell him what to do. He just has to get over it himself. He has to understand, this as a pilot, mistakes happen, got to learn from it, keep going, as Viper says. So yeah, I don't know. I thought the story was fantastic. I could have completely done without the romantic interest. It was it was a total waste of time for me. Total waste of time. I'm not interested in it. I'm not. Like, it has no bearing on the story at all for me. So I was completely taken out. All of those moments. I mean, I think probably in the 90s when I eventually watched this movie, because I definitely didn't see it when I was 6 years old, when in 86. But probably in the 90s, I was probably like, ooh, yeah, love scene, awesome. But now I'm just totally, I don't know, not in it. I don't know. It just didn't do anything for me.
So
that would be the
point.
one criticism that I would have. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been in there. They needed some kind of establish him having a life outside of a plane, right? He's an actual human being.
I think that's a really fair point, though. Like, yeah, it does flesh out his character, and it reasserts his pilot tendencies, right? He's cocky, he's arrogant, and he's in for the fight. His approach to her is very pilot, and his relentlessness is very pilot. I don't think I've met any pilots. I've just listened to interviews, and the theme does seem to be the arrogance and the level of cockiness is there among pilots. Like that's the group of people that if you're going to walk into a room, you got to just check your mind at the door because they're probably going to try to, alpha dog you or whatever, stupid
And if
thing.
you're a pilot, please leave comments down below and let us know if we're right or wrong.
But it was just,
I think you're right.
but like I listened to this podcast called, I think I sent you one of the episodes. It's like Mission Interplanetary. I think it's called. And the woman on there is a pilot and she's a NASA astronaut. And sometimes she'll talk about like the attitude of pilots, and she's like, hey, it is what it is.
It is what it is. You got to be a certain way to do what you do.
Yeah. Can you imagine being in charge of not just an expensive plane, but the attitude that takes with, I'm going to put my life and others' lives in my hands. Yeah. And it's going to be not just okay, it's going to be amazing. Like y'all are going to be good. Like you do have to have a level of confidence that supersedes the average Joe.
100%.
And I don't know if I could be a pilot on that level. I'm sure I would have to undergo some changes in my mindset. But yeah, it makes sense. And her story, the Charlie subplot, if you want to call it that, it helps flesh that out. But I think you're making an interesting point that it may not be mission critical to this story. Like it's a fun thing. The one thing it does also give us though is you talked about the his winning or his losing being important to set up his final win and when it matters most, right? And I think she also adds to that idea of victory and loss, right? Because you can't have everything be sweet. You can't have everything be bitter. Sweet must be followed by bitter, and bitter must be followed by sweet in order to balance things out and in order to create an experience, right? You can't just beat on a character for, an hour and 25 minutes and then give them 5 minutes of victory. Like you can, and there's probably movies that do that. But you got to really be delicate in how you go about it, or else you just feel a little too beat up as an audience member. And so with her though, she gives him a really big victory, right? Because he's constantly getting shot down, and then they play kind of this, I don't know, chase, cat and mouse game of love. But he finally gets her, right? He finally gets a win, gets Charlie, and things are going well. And that's a really big victory for him in this story. But it's followed very soon by Goose Dying, right? He goes from one peak to a valley. And which, by the way, Goose Dying, you're right. This is one of the most memorable deaths in cinema, in my generation at least, cinema history. It's right up there with whatever Mufasa. But I love how Goose dies. Maverick gets back, takes a shower, and Viper walks in. Hey, you gotta let him go. Like, bro, his body's still bleeding in the next room, and you're over here saying, can I have an hour? Can I grieve for 15 minutes? And he's like, hey, you gotta let him go. Damn, man.
You get no time.
No time. Move on. It's time to move on, Maverick.
You've grieved long enough. Dude, it's been 13 minutes.
I just washed his blood off.
It's still under my nails.
That cracked me up. I will say, watching this twice really helped me. Like, I watched it that first time with that same exact lens that you were talking about, that homoerotic lens, and also just the lens of how much some of these things have been mocked and made fun of, right? The volleyball sequence and you name it, right? This whole movie is just so incredibly famous that and iconic that it's easy to kind of harpoon it and kind of see through all the machismo and how serious it takes itself. It takes itself incredibly serious, which whenever you kind of step back and see kind of the level of, cheese that kind of sits on top, it becomes easy to kind of laugh at it. And so I had a hard time engaging with it my first watch. But then rewatching it, it was like I got all the giggles out and I was able to actually really enjoy it. And I was trying to take notes and I kept getting sucked in. And so it's still a really good movie if you can remove, I think, yourself and maybe even your own ego and kind of let go of, all those aspects of it and just kind of enjoy it for what it is. Because it's still really fun and there's
I mean, like, look, I can hug you,
mm-hmm.
right? If I haven't seen you in a while, dude, I'm going to hug you, I'll put my hand on your shoulder, like there's nothing about it. And I think in especially in like 1986, there was no like assumption, of we're going to make this homoerotic. Like
right.
it was like I said earlier, and it's a way to establish camaraderie, visually, rather than just, I'm going to say I'm your brother and I'm going to stick by my wingman, or I'm not, it's like just another thing. It was a little much of like, the tidy whities, but that's an 80s thing, and, being in a, like just hanging out, standing around in a locker, like, like those kinds of things were, but you can watch that through a lens of just, this is just happening rather than this is a homoerotic thing.
But I think you're making a really important point, which is in 1986, there was an innocence and a sincerity that was there that isn't there anymore. And that kind of sucks because we hear a lot about the idea of toxic masculinity, right? Where even if you don't subscribe to it, if you think that whole line of ideology and philosophizing is just complete and utter stupidity. But whenever you see men trying to connect and whatever, like be physical with each other, and the takeaway is to make fun of it, all you're trying to do is reinforce this kind of stoic classical machismo as the norm, instead of saying, it's okay to do all those things and to not be made fun of for it. That's a good lesson to walk away with too.
Totally. There is no we are not in an era anymore where these things could happen and people don't, like assume something, right? And you're just putting assumptions on situations or on people. But back then, I guess that was a good thing that didn't really exist as much, where these things could happen. Like I could express love to another man in a way that isn't assumed to be sexual, right? Like it just kind of like is now. And so there's I was trying to watch it through the lens of the innocence and unassumptiveness, if that's a word, unassumption of a how you're leaning sexually. Like it was just like something that was happening in the film. That was all. Because there wasn't any kind of other insinuation outside of those moments. There was a lot of instructors saying, "I want somebody's butts." Like what was the tower guy? I want somebody's butts. He said it like 7 times or something. And at that point, I said, "Oh, maybe Quentin's got a point about this movie."
But you could easily spend like a day or two and going line by line and analyzing everything, and walk away with just a full bulletin board full of analysis on the homoerotic side of things, and it would be hilarious. Like I would absolutely enjoy that. But,
I'm sure someone has. Let's scour the internet.
But I prefer, I think, to look at it with the more kind of innocent, sincere way that it was delivered, and that's kind of nice. Because most of this film is like straight exposition, and whenever you start kind of divorcing yourself from all the ideology of it, like you're just constantly learning bits and pieces here. And they're, from a writing standpoint, like very unabashed with just telling you things straight out. Like, and some of it's clever. I think you made a good point about him being inverted really sets up his expertise and his level of skill. which is then reinforced whenever he meets this expert, security or aeronautics engineer or whatever, she
Advisor
is.
or whatever,
Because she can't believe it. And he's like, I'm doing things that you don't even understand. Right. That really sets up his level of skill on a whole other level. And then most of the film is just straight up like, I'm banking left. That is exposition. He's telling you what he's about to do. And then we see him do it. But they're in school. And so hearing, a training session or it all just kind of flows in together and in a very naturalistic way. And so it doesn't sting nearly as much hearing about their backgrounds or your dad was a troubled pilot or whatever, kind of stuff that they set up a sketchy background for his dad. And it all kind of flows in together because the attitude of the film is one of training and education. And so I was really impressed with how much they got away with of expositing. I thought that was kind of nice. I also appreciate that this is 1986, which was probably getting close to the peak of the classic loose cannon storyline, right? Because you have Lethal Weapon, and God knows how many movies were all about the loose cannon cop or the loose cannon army guy. And here, we have the loose cannon pilot, whole storyline, which is that clip I played is all about how he's amazing, but he's writing checks his body can't cash, right? It's just peak 80s storyline. And that whole idea, I think, also works very, very well in uniform situations. And I mean that in, multiple ways, of course, where the obedience and chain of command is paramount. And that, my friends, was a triple entendre. I'll let you think it out. And so you don't see a lot of loose cannon storylines in like the mafia, right? Because everyone there is kind of a loose cannon to begin with. But having a loose cannon in school, right, where everyone obedience and the paying attention, following the rules are all what everyone else is doing. It's easy to create that contrast with a loose cannon storyline. And we just don't see that as much anymore, of course. But part and parcel with that is the bald, yelly captain, right? And they have this guy at the beginning and in the end. And I think it's a really smart play because he's now super easy to remember. He's got a very distinct visual look, and he's just, yelling, and he's very authoritative. And it's just a great casting and a great character development because at the same time, you don't really see him for about 90 minutes. You see him the first 5 minutes, and then you see him in the last 5 minutes. And then you don't see him anywhere else. And so casting and creating that kind of very strong vocal character is a really smart way to keep us looped in on when and where Maverick is, because Tom Skerritt has a very nice full head of hair, and so you can't.
He's not
play
as
that card.
ominous.
No,
They make him like a dad figure, which is really great. Like teach him a lesson, get him back up and flying right away.
He's
and
perfect. My brother met him once.
There's a great dad thing at the end where when Maverick goes to see him, and he like I said earlier, doesn't tell him what to do, doesn't tell him to leave, doesn't tell him to stay. He basically just says, "Okay, you have a decision to make." It's such a dad move. It's such a really great, because then when he makes the decision to stay, it's his own. He wasn't influenced. It's his own decision to continue.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Nice. So I was going to ask you too, what did you, tying up the loose cannon idea, the only way to handle a cocky loose cannon is to give them a crisis of confidence. And I think you tied it up really nicely, because ultimately it's up to him. You can't regain your confidence if you can't own your own choice, and letting Viper put that responsibility back onto his own shoulders is the only way you can authentically and organically kind of resolve that scenario. And then of course they push him. Fine. He comes back, but we don't know if he's back. And so you have to put him through the same thing that shook his confidence in the first place, which is the jet wash. And all these very simple, tidy ideas are just beautifully used and helps let the audience in on the lingo and the problems that fighter pilots come into, because it's really, really good writing, actually. It's very impressive. But the thing I was going to ask you about, just completely going back in time, like 10 minutes here, Jester, the first time we see them fighting in the air, Jester goes below the hard deck. Now that Jester breaks the rules, but Maverick is the one penalized for it, right? It's a very rules for thee, but not for me situation here. Do you have an opinion on that? Like, do you think there was an idea that Jester was trying to get at, or do you think he was just being a little bitch and trying not to get caught? Like, what? Yeah. How do you read into that?
That's a good question. I mean, I didn't ever look at it as Jester breaking a rule, because he didn't engage. He just flew below the hard deck. You know what I mean? The one who engaged was Maverick. Now, if Maverick would have flown below the hard deck and then Jester engaged, then he's the one who broke the rule. You can be below the hard deck, but you just can't engage. This is the way I saw it. So, but I did see it as him being a little bitch, because he knew he was going to get caught. So he flew, and they even established that as a line, as an exposition line. Let's get down there before he goes below the hard deck. Because like at first he goes vertical. I remember that moment. He's going vertical. So am I. I'm going vertical too. And they go vertical, and then Maverick can't get to him. And so then he starts flying down, and then Goose mentions, let's get down there before he gets below the hard deck. And then
so that's total strategy on his part.
Totally. He knew he was toast. So either he did it so he wouldn't get shot, which I don't necessarily think, because I think that he has respect for Maverick as a pilot. He thinks that Maverick is really fucking good. But I think he was testing him to see, will he break this rule of engagement? And he did. I think it was a test that he gave him, and Maverick failed. They established that a really great way at the end, or after that, when he goes into the locker room and he says, that was the best flying I've seen yet. Right up to the point. Oh no, that was when he got killed. That was the one where he got killed. Anyway, I think that he's got a lot of respect for Maverick, and he was just testing him, and Maverick failed.
Nice analysis. I think the other couple things that jumped out, I mean, this is no-brainer stuff here on cinematography, right? A lot of golden sunset coloring, mostly when you're on the aircraft carrier, the landing pads, all that kind of stuff. It's very nostalgic. I think even in '86, that had a very nostalgic feeling, because of a lot of old photographs tend to yellow, right? The oxygen hits like Polaroids, and just over time it begins to yellow. And so what may have been crisp, sharp blue colors become this sepia kind of coloring. And even older photographs are just straight up sepia. I don't know if they necessarily came out originally that way, but one way or another, it's what they look like. And so gold does create this kind of nostalgic, whimsy, early morning. It's just, golden hour is a beautiful time of day to shoot, but I bet a fraction of these scenes were actually shot during golden hour. Instead, they probably used a lot of orange filters, especially when they're on the aircraft carrier, because some of those shots, I'm like, that's probably like 10 a.m. or nowhere near sunrise. But throw some orange filters on there, or whatever color they may have been using, some polarizers to kind of create a little more contrast. And suddenly you have this gorgeous look, especially that opening sequence when we're just seeing credits roll and getting the vibe, right? They probably just sat around on this deck for a week straight shooting really cool shit. Hey, let's just roll, and we'll get them trying to avoid bashing their skulls against planes, right? And doing all this crazy acrobatic stuff on the ground. I mean, it's just gorgeous, and it's just a really smart way to set your film and make it look gorgeous. I personally like Tony Scott's style more than Ridley Scott, even if Ridley Scott ultimately has the more notable catalog. Tony Scott, I think if I could emulate one or the other, I would probably personally lean towards Tony Scott. And I'm pretty surprised we haven't done more of his films. I think this is only the second one. We did Man on Fire in this, and at some point we'll do Crimson Tide, I think, just because it's Denzel and Tony Scott. Like,
Yeah, man.
There's no, and Gene Hackman. There's no losing there.
I would really like to see the boards for this film. Like, how do you make
man.
boards? You know,
Yeah.
like how do you
Yeah.
really like? How do you make the boards for this? I mean, you like, you know, do you do that kind of style, the kind of run and gun? Or we're just gonna get what we get, and that we're gonna build the story around what we get? Because there's a lot of shots where, you know, they just exist. Like you said, you know, the guys on the deck ducking as the plane goes over them, you know, those kind of things. Do you storyboard out the dogfights? Do we know we need the plane to go this way? Now we need the plane to go this way. Is it based off the script? If, you know, or does the script evolve with what they capture? Like, how do you do this? I don't know.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's a good question. I bet they sat in a lot of rooms with pilots and trainers, and just kind of maybe even the way I would probably start is T-shirts. Like, hey, you're going to be Goose and Maverick, and we're going to have y'all kind of sitting in desk or whatever, and just kind of start staging like, oh, this is the way this is going to look. And then you can kind of move to a map, right? Where you're symbolizing, oh, here's two jets on a map and he's going to break right. And then maybe you can like take pictures of this and storyboard that way, begin to just start to slowly build the stakes. And how can we use some of these cool specific lingos, jargon, terminology in order to, in the most efficient way possible. Because you don't want to use jet wash 50 times. Instead, you want to invoke it twice. And that way the impact is that much greater. And you want to hit the brakes twice, establish how it works. And then once you kind of understand all the jargon and maybe what you need to accomplish in certain scenes emotionally, you can start to work in, okay, yeah, I don't know. That would be a wild and really stressful like process, I'm sure.
Yeah. And filming it had to be really interesting too.
Had to
okay,
be.
now you're going to look to the left as a plane passes, you know, like the directing of that. And oh my gosh, let me just tip my hat to the ADR people, because you know all of this stuff was ADR'd, all the stuff in the planes and everything, and you know, and to the actors in doing it, you know, it had to be.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that also dates this film is in the 80s up until somewhere in the 90s, the microphone audio was at a certain quality. And so it's a little thinner, right? We don't have as much bassiness in 80s films as we do, and probably somewhere around the early to mid 90s. It seems like there was a massive jump in technology that just captured the low end so much better and more crisply. It's just hard to do from a distance because it's not like you can get the mic right up on their mouths in the middle of a scene, right? You have to record from 3, 4, sometimes 10 feet away, and capturing bass from that distance is just impossible. And I'm sure lavalier technology just wasn't as good either. And so the thin audio certainly dates it, but I mean, yeah,
but that's the point. But the idea of having the mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have the masks over their mouths, so we don't even see. We can't see them talking. So we have, you know, that was a great move, you know, audio wise, you know, for ADR to have those masks on them almost all the time, you know, so we don't see if they're in sync or not. We don't, you know, whatever. And it's supposed to be thin because it's a radio, so they get around that way. But I feel the energy behind the ADR performance, right? So, you know, when they're freaking out, like, oh, we're going to ballistic, man, go, you know, or whatever. Like, I just imagine them being in a booth, recording this, and still having to have that energy of we're in a dogfight right now, you know?
Well, I wonder if they were able to actually use a lot of that audio.
Oh, maybe.
Because none of that, I assume almost none of those cockpit shots were actually in the air of a fighter jet.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's all studio stuff. And so maybe it's like, yeah, it's a little degraded, but we're just going to degrade it more. And so why not just keep it? And
maybe they put a mic in the mask and they were doing it right then. Yeah,
I mean, maybe even they're recording on the other end. Maybe they're actually just using the the built-in comms, and then they're capturing the other end of it. And that way you're really getting a true sense of the way the audio sounds in those jets.
That would be brilliant.
That would be, I mean, assuming you can get it to Tony's, happy place. Nice. The other thing I loved is, as far as like camera work and the performance of the jets, like, I don't know how to call it. But I love how out of control at the beginning Cougar looks when he's trying to land, right? He is just wobble city. And I feel tense watching it. I don't care if I know what's about to happen. I'm still like freaked out watching him getting close to the aircraft carrier, and he cannot get level. But I love that choice because there's no real risk. He's going to make it look as wild as possible before it just suddenly safely catches, right? There's absolutely zero risk to the viewing experience. Instead, you're just heightening things. You're getting a good buildup. And now you can just cut to, the cable catching at an insane speed. I mean, that's a really intense experience, it looks like, to land on the aircraft carrier, even without the wobbling. Like, so just play it up. And my God, man, I
could never do it in the video game.
No, same.
I could never land. I would kill everything until I had to land, and I would never land. I think
I played that a couple years ago, actually.
Did you really?
Yeah, I have an emulator.
Is it still hard to land?
It's still freaking impossible, man. It's so good.
Okay.
My last note is really around the music. I thought the use of music is excellent, even if the music itself is not always excellent, right? It's very 80s. But what it does is it helps us stay emotionally tuned in, despite being thrown in and out of scenes constantly, right? This movie moves super quick, but the music keeps us emotionally oriented. And so let's look at a couple of sequences, mostly around Maverick and Charlie. Actually, entirely around Maverick and Charlie. No. The first sequence is Maverick goes and has dinner with Charlie. And at the end of that, right, this is a really great sequence because at the end, he leaves her turned on at her place. He's right at the door of what he's wanting, and he just bounces, which is a baller move. Well done, sir. But the music kicks in as he's walking out the door, right? I think it's the Take My Breath Away instrumental, and he rides away. And the song bleeds into the next scene when they catch each other in the elevator, right? And now he needs another shower. Whatever. But the song emotionally connects those two scenes, even though they're completely disconnected otherwise. But it creates a strong lover's vibe and helps build up and reinforce their connection, right? And so it sets the tone for the elevator scene instead of having to rebuild the chemistry and kind of reset. Because without that music, suddenly you're just back in the elevator, and you might still have some residue from the last scene, but you're now emotionally thinking, oh, what are we doing now? Oh, and it becomes this discovery that you're recreating this whole moment. Instead, using that, letting the music do the heavy lifting, you stay in this same headspace that he leaves her house with, and you stay in that as you watch him drive away, and you stay in that as the elevator opens, and we see Kelly McGillis just destroying his world. She is just rocking it, right? And now he's like, oh, here we are, and he's shirtless, and we're staying in the same headspace because of the music, and it's just a really strong way to continue to build instead of having to rebuild and leave us at another place of, oh man, is something going to happen now? Because that would be a very unsatisfying experience to reset, rebuild, and then get doused again. Instead, we stay in that same space that whole time before we finally move on to other things. The next sequence that they do a really great job with is when Maverick and Charlie seal the deal. Like, music carries them through a fight scene straight into a love scene. And so it's when it kind of starts right at the tail end of another scene where the music, Charlie shoots down Mav, right? They're in this post-hop debrief, and a hop is what they call these aerial battles. And they're in this post-hop debrief, and she is just killing him, saying this was irresponsible, even if a victory in the end. And they go into the parking lot, and she tries to talk to Mav, but he races off, revs his engine. I can't hear you, whatever. And he just flies away, and she chases him. Right. And then they fight some more, and then it segues into a confession of love and then a love scene. Like, that's a really long built up sequence, but that whole sequence uses Take My, the instrumental, I think still using Take My Love Away. It becomes their theme song. Even if their actual song is whatever that Love and Feeling thing is. Yeah. Is that the Righteous Brothers?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know. I'm not good at 80s music, if you can't tell.
Me either.
But the music keeps us tuned in to that undercurrent. It's a lover's tension instead of a bitter tension. And so we can more quickly transition into something tender. Without the score soundtrack, it gets super herky-jerky and would give us kind of whiplash by constantly switching tones, right? You go from, oh, they were just in love a minute ago, to now he's mad and he's revving the engine and now she's almost getting in car wrecks. It would feel very cartoony to move from romantic to tense to love within 90 seconds, and having the music kind of emulate that, or even stripping it away. It could give you whiplash. And instead, keeping that music there keeps you in the headspace of this is love. Everything they're experiencing now is a love vibe. And you're just kind of waiting for it to resolve itself, instead of waiting to see, are they going to punch each other or are they going to kiss? I don't know. And the music is doing so much heavy lifting in the smartest way possible. And they use music to do the same thing in other sequences. After Goose dies, right, we stay in this guitar riff, mood as he's dealing with that, and they connect his moment in the locker room with Viper. They connect that with his hearing in front of the jury, the panel, the review panel. They connect it to him sitting in the bar, right? We're just sitting in the same headspace, and it connects all these scenes to tell one story about him dealing with the loss of Goose. And they just do a really, really great job, even though this movie is moving lightning fast. When you think about all the story beats we're hitting, they use music to really help you stay connected through these little mini movies, these 10-minute sequences that are telling these stories of love, camaraderie, loss, etc. Great.
And you're set up that's a great point. And you're set up at the very beginning that way. In a way, it opens very like dramatic. Dong, you have these bells. Dong, boom, boom. And it's really slow build. And then all of a sudden, it is so abrupt. As soon as the jet takes off,
danger zone.
It is straight into this like not rock, but I guess more aggressive. Like, now we're getting into it. We're setting you up, and now we're into it. And this is where it establishes this is where the action is going to be. It's going to be in the air, in these jets. And so when we see it take off, it also takes off. And it's a really weird cut. It's audio-wise. It's really strange and kind of like not on, but it's fine. I rewinded a couple times. Like, what just happened there? How did they make that they just didn't give a fuck, and they were like, all right, just cut it here. Okay, cool.
There's a jet engine with flames coming out of it. Let's do it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even audio wise, it wasn't like on beat. It was
You're right.
Like,
yeah.
It was, I don't know. It was really
it's a
strange cut,
yeah.
but whatever. It didn't matter. I got what they were doing. And it establishes they're going to use music to take you on this journey.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and which they very much did.
Because I can imagine if they expected this to be what it ended up being, they actually add probably 30 minutes onto the runtime in order to flesh out a lot of these story beats. And I can imagine the sequel is probably going to run close to 2.5 hours. I haven't looked at the runtime, but I'm sure they're not pressing an hour 49 or whatever this runtime is. It feels like an hour 40-minute movie, which is very, very short for a blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
Most blockbusters, but if you can do a blockbuster for an hour and 40, your producers are extremely happy, not just because you save on budget, but also because you can have more plays at the theater in a single day, which translates into much more box office. if you can have 10 showings
point.
instead of 6 or 7, that's the money game right there. Yeah.
It says it's 2 hours 17 minutes.
The new one.
The new one.
Well, looky there.
Looky there.
As it goes, yeah. And they just want to give you more bang for your buck or whatever.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll see. Anyway, yeah. So I enjoyed it, man. I think this is rightly up there in the annals of great movies, and rightly so.
Yeah, definitely. You have to put on your 80s hat for it.
Yeah.
You have to make some concessions, so it doesn't 100% hold up. But I think that the stuff like the dog fighting, the cinematography holds up with the dog fighting, and the use of music is really amazing. And
even most of the wardrobe, I think, still feels like not super dated, because uniforms help to create a timeless look, and most of our time is spent with people in uniforms. And Tom Cruise has a nice, short, timeless haircut. I think there's a lot of ways that it still holds up, even if in some ways, like you said, you still have to really put on your 80s hat, but it doesn't feel quite as bad because of cinematography and etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the whole, it's Tom Cruise, which, especially Tom Cruise in the 80s it establishes the girls want to be with him and guys want to be him kind of mentality, which I think even in 2022, it's like Brad Pitt and Fight Club. Like everybody, references that and references Tom Cruise in Top Gun or like Days of Thunder, kind of thing, where girls want to be him and guys want to be with him. And so, and they do a good job of like, allowing that to be what it is, not trying to do anything different. I mean, from a writing standpoint, I agree with you. I think it's like, really, really well done. And I'm really curious about the new one to see, are they going to go too deep, or are they going to let it be its own thing, or what are the reaches they're going to make, to try to harken back.
But I think they unintentionally set it up so well. At the end of the movie, he says, I want to be an instructor.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And then on top of that, we got to meet Goose's son, and Goose dies, which is super relevant because this whole film is really about Maverick wrestling with the death of his own father. And so you can continue that theme into the next film. And that inherently creates a conflict within these characters. I'm assuming, I haven't really watched a trailer, so I don't really know what's coming, but which is a great way to watch it. But I assume they're going to circle back to some of those ideas. It's all there if they want to use it, I think.
You haven't watched the trailer for the new one yet?
No, I've seen a piece of it. Just I don't know. I saw Miles Teller with a mustache, and I was like, that's got to be Goose's son. Like, that was.
You're a brilliant human being. Because the stash gives it away. Why not? Why not just like put it on the nose?
That's right. But yeah, that's as far as as much as I know about what happens. And I know Jennifer Connelly, the other most timeless human being on the planet, between
them two,
Charlize Theron, and like, my God, and Tom Cruise, Paul Rudd, like there's a community of vampires in Hollywood.
Yes, I totally agree.
They all sleep upside down in like a cave somewhere.
I don't think you're wrong about that. Yeah.
Nice. So, what are you gonna recommend this week?
So, I was a little bit torn, but I saw just a clip of this like show or whatever on Instagram, and I decided to just go start to watch it, and it's like weird, and it's got Josh Brolin in it. It's weird, but it's really amazing and well done. It's on Amazon Video, so which is strange, but it's called Outer Range, and I've been watching it, for the last few days, and I haven't finished the first season yet quite.
There's more than one season?
What?
There's more than one season?
No, I think this is only
okay.
season. I just haven't finished this. It's the first season. I haven't finished it yet, but I've gotten, I think, 8 episodes or 7 episodes in or something. I don't know. I just love Brolin. He's so good. Everything that guy does is unbelievably heavy and intense and just wonderful. All the acting in it is like really incredible. I think the storyline is interesting and it's slow because it's a show, not a movie. So they develop stuff over time, almost annoyingly. Like shows are kind of annoying to me now because it's like, you're going to ask me for 12 hours of my life rather than 2. It's shit better be good. But it's been enjoyable. And I find myself at the end of the day thinking, I'm going to watch an episode of this. So, so I'm going to recommend Outer Range.
Nice. Our friend Brianna actually sent me an email the other day saying I need to watch it. She said it reminded her of my script. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I did not see that coming. Nice. I'll check that out.
Wow.
I'm excited to see what this is all about. I saw that clip you sent me and I was like, ooh, this is intense. I like it.
That clip, I saw it, and it's him basically like cursing God. And I was like, what is the premise of this? Like, wow. Anyway, so
nice.
Interesting show.
I am going to recommend a film called Petite, Maman. I don't speak French, and so it all sounds like hillbilly, and that's my problem I'm putting onto y'all. But it's by equally French director and writer Celine
Dion.
Celine Dion. Celine Sciamma. It's Sciamma. I think she's brilliant. I've recommended another one of her films before. The Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I thought was phenomenal. And I just saw that she had a new movie out called Petite Maman, Maman. And I was like, I'm just going to go watch it. I have no idea what this is about. And what a great way to experience this movie, because there's a moment where I'm like, I wonder, what would make this movie really interesting is if they did X, Y, Z. And then they did X, Y, Z. And I was just blown away. And it's short. It's an hour and 13 minutes. I love all these recent films that are being free to shorten their runtime and just say, hey, this is the best version of this story. We don't need that extra 20 minutes. We're going to just get in and out and tell that. And it's just this beautiful story. I don't even want to spoil any of it. If you can just hit play, this is a great, wonderful movie to hit play. I will say it's about a little girl and experiencing the loss of her grandmother. And it takes her down some interesting paths. And it's just incredible writing. I love movies that make me hate myself and from the writing standpoint, where I'm just like, how did you come up with this genius, simple idea that anyone could have made? But you made it 10 times better than anyone else would have made it.
Awesome.
And it's just a genius little wrinkle. And I am just in awe of her writing and directing because it's very light-handed, and she directs this little 7-8 year-old little girl in the most magical way possible. And so I highly recommend it. It's a small, simple film. Like, go in understanding that you're probably going to spend time with like 3 people and that's it. And it's just a very simple little indie film, art house film. And I just think it's pure magic. So Petite Maman, I've now, I think, pronounced it 7 different ways. And so hopefully you can figure it out from there. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to see what Maverick is up to, 35 years later with Top Gun Maverick, aptly titled. So if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast, and leave us a note. If there's something you want us to cover, things you find interesting. If you're a pilot and you want to say, actually, buddy, this is the way it is in the air. You're writing checks your body can't cash, Wes, Todd. And then like grit your teeth in front of us.
That's right. Iceman. I am dangerous.
You can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Top Gun.
And our quote of the day this week is from the Wright Brothers. If we worked on the assumption that what is accepted as true really is true, then there would be little hope for advance. I think that is a great quote. I mean, you have to, people that change the world change it by, taking what is thought to be true, or, the assumption that something can't be done and finding a way to do it. Those are the people that change the world. Those are the people that make a massive difference. I think that we can all do that in some small way, even if it's not, inventing the, human flight, right? But there's definitely a way to take what some people might assume to be correct or incorrect and look at it in a different light. I think that's brilliant.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
didn't realize I've used that quote before. Damn it, Wes.
Oh, you
Do
did?
better. Yeah.
I don't remember it. How long ago was that?
That was Primer. That was like 100
Oh.
episodes ago.
Yeah. I mean, I knew we'd quoted the Wright Brothers, but
Yeah. Damn it. Well, there's a reason I get drawn to that because it's beautiful and it's
That's okay.
its approach and thoughtfulness about how we advance and how we take for granted certain assumptions, and you have to be willing to look dumb in order to see progress. If no one was ever willing to look stupid, we would never have progress, because you're only then operating within accepted norms and accepted assumed truths. And so I love that idea of just go for it, right? Try, risk, go, do. Yeah.
and assume that no one will understand or support you until you've actually done it. That's the other thing.
That is, yes.
That's the other thing is like, and I war with this myself of wanting to get some kind of validation through the process to hopefully that, that what I'm doing is resonating, but that's the wrong way to go about it. It's like, you got to do it first and then people will see you as the doer, rather than hoping that you can, get people to understand you and support you before that happens. Anyway, great quote. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is a lot of fun. I'm glad that you liked it as much as I did. I'm glad that I actually liked it still.
Yeah,
I went into it a little bit nervous that, this like iconic film wouldn't be as timeless as I'd hope it was, but in a lot of ways it was. Make sure you join us next week. We're doing Top Gun Maverick. And until then, please share us with your friends, like us on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and let us know if there's a film that you'd like us to review or to talk about. We would love to hear from you. Until next week, I am Todd.
I am Wes.
Go watch the movies.